Well, good morning, respectable Vice Ministers of Education of Guatemala, ministers of this entity who is in charge of education of Guatemala, respectable authorities coming from different countries and different sectors. It's a great privilege to count with your presence in Guatemala in the framework of this Integration Summit for Peace, CUMIPAZ. Please be welcome to this country and to this session, this educative session on this framework of this summit. I want to greet to every one of you for being in Guatemala, and I want to ask you in a respectful way to bring applause to Guatemala. Guatemala is the heart of Mesoamerica that saw the birth of two Nobel Prizes. Literature Nobel Prize, Miguel Ángel Asturias. And the topic that today we're talking is the Nobel Prize Rigoberta Menchú, a Mayan Quiche woman. Those are standards of this country that very little times we speak about them around the world. And sometimes of this Integration Summit for Peace and the subject of education is good to mention to these two illustrated people that have remarked the name of this country through their work and contribution to the social development and peace in the world. For me, it's an honor to participate in this opportunity so we can develop a very important thematic, and precisely is the contribution of the state in the formation of citizens for peace. The perspectives and the challenges on this topic are very interesting, and I would like to develop it like in the following way. We can appreciate in this. I'm gonna get help of these projections to be speaking about this topic. And then it's important to mention which are the challenges of the Latin American education for the consolidation of peace, and what is the contribution of the states for integral education for citizens. Two very transcendental topics, and with no doubt, the educational systems need to focus into a new citizenship and democracy. Probably very little times we have reflex as citizens and like decision makers over what kind of education we have for the citizenship. And let's look real quick the three things that we know as education for citizenship. The first thing we have to remember, in 18th and 19th century, the French Revolution, the independence of United States of America, the resurging of the political sessions of Latin America, the school. And the school, as all you know, it's especially belongs to the industrial era. All that time between 3700 is the time where the national states were born, and they were consolidated, or we work in a systematic way to consolidate those states during the 19th century. Example, United States of America, French, and later the countries of Latin America. And seeing the need to get strength, those states get strength and those political systems, because it was a need to build legitimacy. We need tools to build that. It was a need to socialize and convert in citizens the children and youth of those states and political systems. Then the new states that were born in the 18th century and 19th century, they had those three necessities. What it was required to consolidate those new states of the 18th century forward, it was needed to some minimum requirements through a common language and through a school system free and firm. So it's not in those prior years we the direction of the states was uniformity. Particular cases like Guatemala and others of the region, the establishment of an official language, the establishment of schools with curriculums looking the solution to the strengthening of the concept of state and belonging to a political system. Also, it was required to involve values associated to the national country and then social environment. That's why most of us that we were at school in the past century, and I don't think it's nobody from the prior century, always all the curricular content was focused on knowing the national history, knowing the founders, who won the battle, who lost the battle, who were the losers, geography, social institutions. Those were that was the most regulated content of the educational system because that was looking to strength. In a way that education for citizenship through the school took two basic functions. And it's very important to remember that the school, just like we know it, was born in the 17th and 18th century with a teacher, with students, with uniform, with some kind of ring to know what time the classes started and what time ended, because at the end a school was being built for an exclusive era that was the industrial era and for the strengthening of the states in that time. The challenge is that the states, the social dynamic is different, and the schools get struck in that time. In that time, and unfortunately sometimes, the two basic functions is just to get the social cohesion around the national entities. And many times these national entities, they deny the entities of another cultural groups, Guatemala, Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, among other countries of this region. It was an educational system uniform in Spanish, without taking consideration the original peoples, without considering the construction of educational proposals from the focus of the original peoples of their economical situations. That's why this society actually they face challenges to get rid of the discrimination, look for equality, to attend the rural areas. But this is product of a whole systematic product, taking with a very more intense way than the 18th and 19th century. As a proof is that in Mexico, the new elected president, he is facing, or he will face through some anthropologists, a big worry about the disappearance of many languages. And Guatemala we can say that doesn't not know that problem because some languages have disappeared from a systematic process. On the other hand, the function assumed by the school was to model the behavior of the individuals through the laws and norms, the political constitution, the system of laws, and was left out the other forms or the alternative forms to resolve conflicts, just like the original people did, and then it was the judicial system was born. All those processes take us to have a fragmented society, a society with paradigms, a society with stereotypes. And then to conclude, we can define that the purpose of that type of education in the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century was to consolidate the national states and not necessarily of democracy. It was work to consolidate states, not to consolidate democracy. Then, why do we need a new focus of citizen education? Because we saw it. Because we didn't consolidate democracy, but to consolidate states. In the second half of the 20th century, it's a replanning of the contents of education, just like a flux of the new wave of democracy. You can say that education for citizenship should form people consider on the behavior of his rights and responsibilities. And then started a new wave. It was needed that citizens will know their obligations and responsibilities, to have the knowledge of those new norms that rule the behavior of men. And then we started working on knowledge over history and institutions. And then it started to transform the curriculum, and the curriculum started to be centered in the formal democracy. But it didn't propose practical learning. In the schools, we learned you have to elect, you have to vote, we have to register. That's formal education, but they did not teach us to solve or didn't develop capacities for the dialogue and to look agreements. That is another level of capacities that during the time in this Latin America and probably around the globe, it has not been adjusted to this kind of learning. Despite the changes, the system has transformed very little, and the old practices coming from the old paradigm from 18th and 19th centuries still vigent. Then we started from nationality goes the formation of citizenship. It's just that if you know the history that the education system teach you, you can be a citizen. Well, they thought very little about formal civism. Why the countries have a flag, why they have symbols, why they have a national anthem. And then we thought that citizenship was to learn that, only that. But citizenship is not limited to itself. And then the educational systems in the region in Latin America and around the globe have those challenges. How to give a step from a rhetorical step to a practical focus. How do we justify that? In reality, we have in Guatemala the political constitution of Guatemala. There is an educational law, just like the rest of the countries, or maybe all the countries. And right there is established what are the goals of the education. And then why is necessary to change the focus? Because the learning of the peace culture, the historical memory, and the human rights is one of the goals of the educational system. In a way that we have to adjust the educational system so we can get there. It's justified the change of focus because there are many waves. There are many educational focus, psychologicals, and then from the academic field, we have to change these paradigms. We have to take account that many national legislation, international, there are assumed agreements by the states. In the case of Guatemala, and by the 80s and 90s, we signed a lot of agreements calling accords of peace. They are about 8 agreements between substantives and adjectives that's being signed, and thus that is a referential frame of the agreements of the states to consolidate democracy, the peace. And then there are agreements internal, and there are agreements assumed in the international field that includes all the people working just like agents of the state to contribute so the educational system secure the change of paradigm and the fulfillment of the agreements, of the legal agreements and political agreements that Guatemala assumed, and just like Guatemala did, all the countries of the world. It is marked in the process of the educational reform. It is included in the curriculums of education. And also another cause that justifies the change of focus. If we do not change the educational focus, if we change the citizenship is civism, and then we never gonna get the social texture, the army conflicts in the country that has broken the social, and then we need to weave the social, political in a harmony way. The socio-economical reality and political of the countries around the world demands a change. Reinforce to form citizens compromised with their countries with a very deep democracy, with a society for all, with a society that has social responsibility, corporative social responsibility, with a society that knows how to live in legality, with a society that has respect to diversity and has a sense of inclusion. Those are the challenges, the social challenges that we have as countries, and then we have to make some adjustments in the educational system so in 10 or 20 years we can have people with better capacities to resolve these topics. The new citizenship privilege the comprehension and action. We can ask ourselves within us how much understanding we have, how much action, how hard or easy we get agreements. The new focus of education to the democratic citizenship faces the following challenges. We have to transcend the focus of nationality to a focus to the democratic life. We have to overcome the historical information, geography, laws, or national institutions by the learning of the mechanisms of democracy, to learn to solve cognitive problems, moral, and legal that the public life includes. We have one of the challenges. This change is to transcend the formation strategy of values to in abstract to get guided to the solution of problems and then solutions for the democracy that includes the application of those values. Many times the educational systems they are focused to promote that the students learn the definition of the values, that they know the values, that they recite them, but how to apply them, how to use them as a tool for the daily life. That is a very important challenge. Well, of course, to overcome those challenges, we have to form teachers to have a better investment in education. So it exists a series of factors that condition the success or the failure in this phase of transition. Besides, it's required an institutional atmosphere that in the institutions of education among the high levels, those intermediate spaces in Guatemala, we have in the departments, we have districts, schools. How democratic are we in the distant spaces that we are working on? Those are challenges and those are improvements that every one of us have to improve. And just like the Ministry of Education, all those institutions around the world. So that is an opportunity to ask us how democratic and participative we are in the exercise of our actions. And then on the other side, it's required that the change is not just a content and behavior. It's required that the schools, the teachers, they live the senses of the materials, the safety of the materials, and everybody assume the uncertainty that brings the change. That we accept the argumentation, but it will be accepted when we assume that everything is not sure and nothing is absolute. Education for democratic citizenship is the platform so students and teachers speak and listen, read and write about the public life. I'm going to mention some characteristics of the new citizenship. Critic citizenship, creative, active, democratic, intercultural, and in favor of equity. Dialogative. Critic because it has to see more than active because participate, because propose, democratic because respect and defends the rights, and is living a legality culture. Culturality because it's living with diversity and it's compromise against the inequity. How much inequity is in the world? How much inequity is in Latin America? How much inequity is in Guatemala? And how much is the compromise of the different so they can fight against that inequity. Dialogue, because dialogue resolved without violence, informative because knows its history, the social problems around its environment, and knows the reality. So these are the characteristics of the new citizenship that requires actual societies. The Ministry of Education of Guatemala wish to share. There are many different programs being carried out for the transformation of this citizenship formation, and there are very practical things that come out, and probably they have little touches of the last century, but every time we do efforts so those shapes take form, take shape, and have a more participative shape. I want to share with you an experience of teenagers, students, that are organized in their schools and governments, scholar governments, and those governments in the schools is an initial participation and formation and practical formation for citizenship, because it's not only the formal democracy, but they are organized to community level, they dialogue, they speak and look solutions to many of the problems. If you allow me, I will present to you a video, a very short video that is going to tell us about the experience. 25th Conference, Latin America. The program of school government is developed in the educational Guatemalan government, and is a very transcendental to the development of the context in the communities for our country. The youth and the young ones there get organized, participate and develop important values in favor of their growth, personal growth, and in benefit of the education of our context. The youth, they are fundamental actors for the development. Through the school government, they generate activities, different activities that allow their community, their school, develop in different ways. Congratulations for the success of the school government. What was the detected problem and the proposed solution? In Guatemala, the problem to solve was to form the youth in citizenship and develop in them civic values. That's why it has been necessary to design a manual of the school government directed to the social science and citizenship formation. With concrete objectives aligned, they are contained in the national curriculum of medium level. It's looked to promote the participation and formation of citizenships with democratic students of the basic education in all the modalities of educational system. Actors and responsible leaders of the execution. Among the actors and leaders of the responsible change of the execution of the project that allowed to get the change, all the students of the basic cycles on national level, the 25 directions of the Republic of Guatemala, and from the government, Mr. President Jimmy Morales, the Ministry of Education, Mr. Oscar Hugo Lopez, and very important actors, just like International Cooperative, they represent Dr. Luis Enrique Lopez, local governments and municipal governments, cooperatives, community councils, and organizations of parents, entities, local entities, and non-governmentals. Goals reached. Among the principal goals reached in the government in Guatemala is reflected in what the students of different schools they get in a concrete way, and then they take political dialogue, laws, and they help the development of their communities. I am Denison Ronaldo Sanchez Granillo, and I'm coming from a familiar core for the development 595 in a village in Quiché. Our plan was to implement desks for our school, and with this we are achieving that every kid has his own desk so they can have a better education and with less danger because we have new desks. My name is Catherine Migdalia. I am representing Instituto Nacional de Educación Básica José San Jacinto, Zona 2 of Cobán, Alta Verapaz. One of the biggest goals that I have had has been the project at the Clean Institute, Clean School, from where it comes the toilet tissue, and then the youth being implementing the patrol of the school. My name is Edison Romeo Casum Morataya, and I represent the Instituto Nacional, and then San Rafael Las Flores, Santa Rosa. My main goal is the gardening and then reforesting trees in our school and the cleaning that we did in the Laguna de Ayatza, that Ban Rural helped us and municipality of San Rafael Las Flores so we can get these goals, and then we are here. It's just an example of an incipient exercise for the formation of the process of citizenship formation, because at the end, the government of the schools and the students participating in these processes, we can see the product of their work, and we do not see all the processes of dialogue that they are taking care of. And then some articulation of the new processes is democracy, human rights, interculturality, and culture of peace. It is mentioned the topic of how to approach the internal conflicts of the different countries, just like a part of the process of transitional justice, and then to know the causes, the consequences, and in the case of Guatemala, countries with similar conditions of the agreements of peace that have been signed in the topic. Then we need to get concrete actions according to the new democracy of citizenship, and then to be mounting expositions, to print magazines, short videos, and other tools according with technology and accessibility that the students have. There are many actions that are required, like promotion of dialogue, and then organization of discussions, forums, and other tools more participative to make reflection of the countries and mechanisms for its transformation. Thank you very much. Have a good day.